Welcome. You're listening to The Aligned Self, Conversations in Creating a Conscious and Abundant Life. This is Daniel DeNovi. I'll be your guide and host. Let's see just where we can take this. All right. Well, welcome in, welcome back. Now, if this is your first time here, there may be other ones to listen to. This is actually for the people that have been listening for a while, only because it's going to be a little bit of rambling. I don't really have anything specific to talk about, but today is my birthday. The day that I'm recording this is October 28th, and I turned 61. Turning 61, I've noticed that lately I've been referring a lot in the podcast and in other areas on just how aged I am. Not that it's old, just that, I've been around the block a little bit. But I think birthdays are always a good time to reflect. It's also a very powerful day to create. So after I record this episode, I'm going to take the rest of the day off and dream with my wife. We're going to sit down and just dream about what we want to create. And on one hand, I think this is interesting that when I was 30, 40, it was very difficult for me to even think ahead to 60. Hell, when I was 19 to think about 30, it was like I couldn't even begin to imagine what life would be like at 30. Yet today, after 6 decades, I see more possibility, more amazing things in my future than at any other point in my life. So today, I'm going to set aside for dream time. I'm going to dream about the future of my education business. I'm going to think about where we're going to live next. We've been in the same spot for a long time, and both my wife and I have been getting the itch, feeling the itch to look for different pastures. And we want some land, some expanse. I've always wanted an area, a retreat, where people could come and visit me. So in my mind, that means more than a couple acres. And at this point, we're not really going to even think about where it's going to be specifically, but just consider the possibilities and the qualities of the place that we want to call in next, that we want to attract. We want to get very connected to the essence of what we want to create rather than the form of it. Because and I've talked about this in the past, form versus essence, when we connect to the essence, then we actually give the universe greater latitude to fulfill on our desires. And as this idea takes shape to a greater degree, I'll share more on the podcast. I'll share more in case you want to get involved, in case you want to someday show up on my doorstep, train and study with me. It's quite windy here in Fort Worth today. And I noticed that there's a branch on the tree just outside my window in my office here that is scraping the window. So occasionally you may hear that in the background. It's gusting 25 to 35 miles an hour, up to 50 miles an hour gust here and there. In fact, I've had to tie down several things in the backyard just so they don't blow away. And speaking of Fort Worth, Dallas, if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I'm starting back up my meetings of the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, Institute of Noetic Sciences community group. So it's DFW Ions. I've been the area coordinator for the DFW Ions for 10 years now, and the torch was handed to me by Bobby Perkins. She had run the group for 10 years. So this year, actually 2020, was the 20-year anniversary. But because of other things going on the planet, we actually shut down our meetings. So after the first of the year in 2022, we'll have a big celebration, a 20th anniversary party. Now, the DFW Ions is a community group which operates under the umbrella of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is based in Petaluma, California. Now, as a community group, we're not directly under the influence of IONS. They support our work, but we're independent of them. And they like to say that, they're not responsible for the things that we do out in the field. And that way they don't have to monitor us too closely. They do guide us in our approach. They do guide us in the topics that we address to some degree. Now, IONS, or the NOETIC Institute, if you're not familiar with it, was created in 1973 by former astronaut Edgar Mitchell. Now, Edgar's no longer on the planet, but he was the sixth man to walk on the moon. And as they were coming back to Earth, Edgar had a window seat, which was just like a 12-inch circle in the side of the command module. So as they're hurling back through space, they're in this slow rotation, and Edgar's looking out the window and he sees this vast star field. And then the Earth comes into view, and then out of view, and then again a vast star field. And he has this moment of enlightenment where he realizes that we're all interconnected and that we're not getting off the planet. If he does one thing, he wanted to start a conversation that bridges the gap between science and technology and spirituality, and hence the creation of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Now, you can learn more about IONS at noetic.org, and I'll leave a link in the show notes. But if you live in the DFW area, we are going to meet in person on Sunday afternoon, November 7th. And in this meeting, I'm going to be the featured speaker, and I'll be talking about rewiring your brain to up-level your experience of life. And it's based in part on my course, Rewiring Your Brain for Abundance. But I'm not always the speaker. I often bring in people, outside speakers, to talk about areas of consciousness, mind-body healing, sound healing, forgiveness, quantum computing, the essence of reality, on and on and on. So if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this is something that you can plug into, and we meet the first Sunday of every month, barring pandemics. So I don't know if I said it earlier, but the link will be in the show notes if you want to learn more. But back to my birthday. I just turned 61, and what's interesting about age is that it factors in to some degree in our self-concept. Because whatever age you are, there's a parameter, there's a limitation that's built into whatever you think that age represents. But in actuality, your birthday just signifies the amount of time that you've been on the planet. It's your chronological age. Now, we have a physical age, a mental age, and emotional age. So we can actually be at different ages in the same body. So if there's any teaching point to this, take a look at how you define yourself based on how old you are. What limitations are there that exist for you because of how old you are or your age? What can you not do, or what can you do? So how does your age limit you? Now, for instance, I have a mental age. I have mental rememberings of being able to do certain things. But physically, my body is out of practice. So I've decided most recently, in the last few months, that I'm going to reclaim my physical youth. Because I've looked in the mirror and I've noticed myself physically looking closer to my age than I ever have in my life. And frankly, what we call aging, what we identify as aging of the body, is actually damage that's brought on through the effects of stress, improper nutrition, and lack of exercise. It's actually the body breaking down. And what most people think about the body or aging of the body is a misnomer. Just because you're a certain age doesn't mean that you're limited physically. You can actually get better and better over time. There are some limitations, but not to the degree that most people consider that are involved in the aging process. What most people consider aging, quote unquote, is actually neglect. And I admit, I raise my hand, I've been a little neglectful on the health side. My fitness level isn't what it should be, or could be. Let's say that, what it could be. Because frankly, I plan on living to be 100, and as technology increases, medical information increases, that could be extended even longer than that. So to be in alignment with living to be 100, I need to make some changes today to make that a reality. And something else that I've noticed in this time of reflection, this time of my birthday reflection, is that I've been working a lot harder than I have to. I've been struggling a lot harder. I've been efforting. And that's not what I teach. It's not what I talk about on the Aligned Self podcast. It's about being aligned, your heart, your mind, and your body, with your intention, that when you're in alignment, life flows with greater ease. I know this to be true. It's a fact. And I know it for myself that the harder I work, the slower I go. So in addition to dreaming today, I'm going to re-embrace the paradox that you can get more done by doing less. It's about how am I being? And one idea that's in that is, do I have to be doing everything? Is there someone I can bring on that can multiply my efforts in the form of an assistant or another person that can pick up some of my job duties in order to free me up to do more productive things? So I'm going to be in the consideration of adding to Team DFW, because there's areas in my business and around the podcast, a list of things to do that I think would be nice that I just haven't got around to doing yet. One of them is to catalog all the different episodes, because we're already here at almost 70 episodes. And by the end of this year, I'll have 100 in the bank. And I foresee another 100 coming in 2022, but I need to be smarter about how I do it. So I'll be batching some and doing some ahead just to make life a little easier. But I have a lot to say, and I've only touched upon the surface of most of the things that I could talk about and want to talk about, and not just to hear myself talk, but to actually add value to your lives. And evidently the messages have been resonating because our listener base has increased week over week, month over month, and we're over 20,000 downloads now since I started this back in April. And over the last month, we've had just over 5,000 downloads. So we continue to grow. And by podcast standards, by measurements that podcasters use, this has been somewhat of a successful run, and I see it only getting better. But again, I'm not interested in huge numbers, because I really want the people that resonate with the message, that resonate with the teachings, that resonate with me. And I know that's not going to be everybody. There was a time when I was highly concerned that everybody liked me. And over the years, if there's anything comes with age, it's wisdom, is realizing that you can't please everybody, and that if you try to please everyone, that you're not yourself, that you'll never be true to yourself if you're serving other people's expectations. And that's one reason why I end every podcast with follow your bliss, the words from Joseph Campbell, mythologist Joseph Campbell. If you haven't followed yet, or if you don't know anything about Joseph Campbell, you need to check him out. In fact, there's a documentary you can listen to it on YouTube or watch it on YouTube, and it's called Finding Joe. Finding Joe. And it's about the mythologist Joseph Campbell and his discovery or his identification of the monomyth, the hero's journey, which is at the center of every movie, especially Star Wars. Star Wars was modeled after the hero's journey, but it's also every great story. And you as an individual can actually look at where you might fall on the hero's journey to see where you are in your spiritual growth. And again, to make it easy, I'll put a link to the documentary. I actually this is what I make work for myself, because I'll mention something in the podcast, then I have to go look up the link and then put it in the show notes. But I'll put the link to the Finding Joe documentary in the show notes. And again, if you're in the DFW area, I'm inviting you to come out and be part of our DFW Ions, our community group, which we meet and we have speakers and presenters the first Sunday of every month. And we meet at the Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas, which is near the Galleria. And if you're in the area, you know where that is, or can easily find it. And again, I'll put that in the show notes. So as I bring this to a close, I want to thank you for your listening. I appreciate your presence in my life. I appreciate you being a subscriber to the Aligned Self podcast. And I hope that I can be a benefit to you in your life and those of your loved ones. That's why I'm here. I'm here to serve you. Not to serve myself. I'm here to serve you, to make your life better. And what I share are the things that I wish that I knew earlier in life or at different stages of my life. And hopefully you don't have to make all the mistakes that I made along the way. So this is Daniel Day off to celebrate his birthday. And as I do, I'm urging you to follow your bliss. And by all means, live the epic life.